People think they chose this life. The long hours, the constant stress, the feeling that something is missing. But choices don't exist in a vacuum. Expectations are shaped before decisions are made. This video explains how people were trained to accept less than previous generations, why struggle is presented as normal, and why wanting more now feels dangerous instead of reasonable. Most people believe that if their life feels smaller than it should, the reason must be personal. A wrong decision, a missed opportunity, a lack of talent. That belief is comforting because it makes the problem feel individual and controllable. But it hides a much larger truth. The truth is that what people consider normal today would have been unacceptable to previous generations, not because people were stronger back then, but because expectations were different. And expectations do not disappear on their own. They are reshaped. Fully. Deliberately. Over time. 40 or 50 years ago in most Western countries, a single average income was enough to support a household. Not a luxury life but a stable one. Rent or a mortgage that did not consume most of the paycheck. Food without constant calculation. Time off that actually meant rest. People did not expect yachts or private jets. They expected security, predictability, and dignity. Today, those same expectations are often labeled unrealistic. Young adults are told that owning a home is a dream, not a baseline. That struggling is part of growth. That permanent instability is normal. Notice what changed. Human needs did not change. The story around them did. At some point, society stopped asking why life was becoming harder and started teaching people how to tolerate it. This shift did not happen overnight. It happened through language, repetition, and comparison. Words like hustle, grind, and adapt replaced words like deserve and expect. When people complained about low wages, rising costs, or constant stress, the response was rarely structural. It was moral. Be grateful. Others have less. At least you have a job. At least you're healthy. At least you're not starving. On the surface, these phrases sound reasonable, even kind. But repeated over years, they train the mind to associate dissatisfaction with guilt. The moment you feel something is wrong, you are reminded that feeling that way makes you ungrateful. Slowly, frustration stops being a signal. It becomes a flaw. If at any point in your life you were made to feel selfish or unrealistic for wanting more stability, more time, or more security, write yes in the comments. This matters more than you think. Another powerful mechanism is controlled comparison. People are constantly shown those who have less, not those who have more. Media focuses on extreme poverty, disaster, and struggle, not to inspire change but to create relief. You look at someone worse off and think, at least I'm not there. That moment of relief replaces the question that should have been asked. Why is the gap between the bottom and the top so large? When comparison always points downward, the system never has to justify the ceiling. This is not accidental. It is psychological containment. As long as you are busy surviving and comparing, you are not demanding. Over time, exhaustion itself becomes normalized. Being tired all the time is no longer seen as a warning sign. It becomes an identity. People brag about sleeping 4 hours, working non-stop, never disconnecting. Burnout is treated like a badge of honor. But an exhausted population is easier to manage. A tired mind does not question narratives. A tired body does not organize resistance. When energy is consumed by survival, there is none left for reflection. This is why modern control rarely looks like force. It looks like routine. Wake up. Commute. Work. Full. Sleep. Repeat. There is another reason why accepting less became so widespread, and it has nothing to do with people suddenly losing ambition. It has to do with how risk was redefined. In the past, risk was associated with danger, instability, or irresponsibility. Today, risk is associated with wanting something different. Changing careers is risky. Questioning authority is risky. Refusing a lifestyle that makes you miserable is risky. Stability, even when it slowly destroys you, is presented as the mature choice. This is how people are taught to stay in situations that no longer serve them. Not because they are happy there, but because leaving feels more dangerous than staying. Over time, fear of instability replaces the desire for growth. Education plays a major role in this shift. From an early age, people are trained to follow instructions, meet external expectations, and avoid mistakes at all costs. Failure is punished more than curiosity is rewarded. Creativity is tolerated only when it fits within predefined limits. As a result, many adults grow up associating safety with obedience. They don't stop dreaming because dreams disappear. They stop dreaming because dreaming feels unsafe. This is why so many people settle into lives they never actively chose. They didn't decide to accept less. They simply followed the safest available path until it became permanent. Another rarely discussed factor is time. Modern life leaves very little room for long-term thinking. Bills are monthly. Deadlines are weekly. Notifications are constant. When your attention is permanently fragmented, you lose the ability to imagine different futures. You become trapped in the present not because you want to be, but because you are never given enough silence to think beyond it. Over time, imagination itself weakens. People stop asking what could be, and focus only on what must be done. This is one of the most effective forms of control because it doesn't restrict movement. It restricts vision. This is why so many people describe their lives as busy but empty. Full schedules, full calendars, full inboxes, and yet a constant sense that something is missing. That feeling is not random. It is the result of expectations being lowered gradually without resistance until people forget they were ever higher. Once expectations are low enough, almost any condition can be tolerated. Long hours, limited choices, constant stress. The system doesn't need to convince people that this life is good. It only needs to convince them that no realistic alternative exists. No time to stop long enough to ask whether this life makes sense. Over time, people don't just accept less materially. They accept less emotionally. Relationships become transactional. Dreams become hobbies. Passion becomes childish. Wanting more is framed as dangerous. Ambitious people are called greedy. Questioning people are called negative. Those who refuse to settle are labeled unrealistic. The message is clear. Adapt or be isolated. Most people choose adaptation not because they agree but because isolation feels worse. This is where acceptance becomes internal. No one has to silence you. You silence yourself. You stop saying what you want. You stop imagining alternatives. You tell yourself this is just how the world works. And once that belief settles in, control no longer requires enforcement. It becomes automatic. Historically, this is not new. Systems have always relied on normalization rather than force. What is new is how invisible the process has become. There are no obvious rituals, no public ceremonies. The rituals are embedded in daily life. The alarm clock. The constant notifications. The endless news cycle. The pressure to always be reachable. These modern rituals do not require belief. Only participation. And participation is almost impossible to avoid. Over years they reshape perception. They shrink expectations without ever announcing that anything was taken. This is why many people feel a vague sense of loss without being able to name it. They don't feel oppressed. They feel stuck. And stuck feels personal, not political. The most effective form of control is not fear. It is resignation. When people stop believing that change is possible, the system no longer has to defend itself. It simply continues. The dangerous part is that once expectations have been lowered long enough, people forget that they were ever higher. They don't remember that life could feel different. They assume this is adulthood. This is realism. This is maturity. But realism is often just the story told by those who benefit from lowered expectations. The moment you accept less without questioning why, control is complete. If this video made you think about your own life, write yes in the comments. Not because it helps me, but because it tells the algorithm this conversation matters. The next video will explain why obedience today is not enforced but learned.